IVM.
Many things that we kind of go through to create content as creators is actually in the mind, right? It starts off in the mind. It is something that we deal with in terms of how we're seeing the world, how we're experiencing the world, how we are actually digesting what is around us, and how we're kind of putting it out there. Most times that can kind of gets pushed around in many ways because of what everybody else is doing, what data tells you, what many things tell you, right? But at the end of the day, it's about what you are thinking about inside, and becomes tougher for people who actually are introverts, right? For people like me who are kind of middle of the radar, not necessarily an introvert or an extrovert, it is a lot simpler. I'm not saying it's not tough. It's simpler. But for someone who's an introvert, to be able to do all these things, to navigate and yet be able to put out content, especially if the kind of content you want to put out also demands that you interact with a lot more people, it's tough, and it makes a person go through a certain kind of journey. One such person who I've been noticing, especially even though I've known him for years, I've noticed that the kind of stuff he's putting out has been a lot more personal and has really focused on the fact that he's actually an introvert, has been Kunal Rao. Like, I've known him from the time he started his comedy career. And when I see what he's putting out now, I find it interesting to see how his evolution has been and how he's looking at his content right now. And so I thought it'd be interesting to kind of get him into the room and talk to him about that. Talk to him about how he looks at his content now, how he looks at creating it, and also dig into the mental space of a creator, right? Because that is so important for anyone who kind of starting off or is even on that journey. It's so important to kind of understand that part of it. And also because his special had is this piece about why ad agencies are ruining the world, so I have a bone to pick with him on that. So all that and more on this episode of Advertising is Dead with Kunal Rao. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief for The Glitch, and we'll be right back with this.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
We are from the Open Library Project, and we host a podcast called Paperback.
Paperback is a podcast where we engage with stalwarts and experts from various industries, suggesting non-fiction titles that contributed to their journey in a big way.
We've had guests like Anjali Rana, Dr. Marcus Rani, Dr. Swati Lodha, Ambi Parmeswaran, Apurva Damani, and many more on our show Paperback. Find new episodes every Wednesday on IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. We're actually not still with. We're just with Kunal.
Yes.
Is that just? I don't know what I'm saying right now. Kunal.
See, the thing is, this is what I mean. We should start rolling before we walk into the room.
We started having a conversation and then realized we weren't rolling. So I think this is the way to do it.
Exactly.
Kunal, why do you hate ad agencies? Let me start with that. Let me get to the point.
I
was watching a special and I was like, you think ad agencies ruin everything.
Yeah, I think ad agencies are the devil. I think they make people do things that they don't want to do. And that's the basic premise, right? Okay, I'll tell you where my hate for ad agencies came from. And I say this with all love to ad agencies because at some point I want them to pay me. But there's this guy, Craig Ferguson. He's a comedian, Scottish comedian. He has a bit, which if you look online is called Why Everything Sucks. Okay, and he says, I figured it out. I figured out why everything sucks. And he says that sometime in the 50s, marketing agencies and advertising agencies figured out that they should market to the youth. Okay. Right? Because if a customer becomes a customer when they're young, they will stay with you for the rest of their lives. And they just kept pushing to the youth. They just kept pushing with the youth. But unfortunately, one of the byproducts of being young is being stupid. Right? True. And you don't really know what you're doing. So as a result, marketing agencies, for lack of a better word, started manipulating the brains of the youth in order to sell products. Now, it was not intentional. They just wanted to sell products, right?
Yeah.
But what started happening, as he says in the clip, is that we started celebrating youth, which is a problem. And everybody is now trying to be young. You're using Botox. You're trying to behave young. You're dressing accordingly. Whereas in the old school method of like experience is very important. We've just forgotten about that. People are just focusing on the youth. And also kids are, malleable minds, little impressionable kids, and you just want to make money off them, man. That's what I hate about it. What happened to ethics?
So, the way I see it, while I do not entirely disagree with what you're saying, I do not entirely agree with what you're saying
Of course,
as well.
there's a lot of grey area, and I agree with you.
It's true. What we do, and so many times I talk to people, right, and especially someone who's kind of joining in the industry and etc. I said, we are taking really inanimate things and kind of giving it a personality.
Yes.
And many times in trying to give it that personality, you try to give it a personality that is most appealing to whoever you're targeting.
Correct.
Right. And I don't know if it's... maybe this is advertising for generations, but literally the fact is everybody wants to be young anyway, right? I don't know if it's an advertising thing or is it something that we always wanted.
Yeah, good question.
This philosophical conversation has started.
I will counter it by another story. I don't remember where I read it. It could be a Michael Gladwell book or something like that, where he talks about there is this what advertisers in the US do is just before Christmas they start, let's take a toy industry or a toy company, they start pumping into, let's say, this particular teddy bear. They pump ads of this teddy bear all over the place, the newspapers, television, blah blah blah. The kids who are 5, 10 years old, 12 years old, who want the teddy bear, they see these ads and like, I want the teddy bear for Christmas, I want the teddy bear for Christmas, and this is like 2 or 3 months of it. But what they do is then they short supply that teddy bear. Right?
It's called the Supreme model. How does Supreme sell globally? It's literally say we're just dropping some products. You're only going to get it for a short period of time. Limited edition drop.
That's okay, which I don't mind. But they do not. So what happens is that you got to buy something for Christmas anyway for the kid, right?
Yeah.
And they've had their mind on the teddy bear, and they say, okay, you know what? There's no teddy bear. Here's this doggy bear or whatever, teddy dog. I don't know what it is. And then they buy that for the kid, and then February comes, 2 months after Christmas, and then suddenly you start seeing the teddy bear everywhere. Yeah. So now you've got that same customer to buy 2 things from you instead of 1.
Yeah.
Right, and that sucks, okay, because that is manipulation.
So capitalism.
Yeah, it's capitalism. Yeah. It is. I'm not a fan of capitalism.
The problem is capitalism, not necessarily.
I mean, of course, America is far more capitalist than India is. We're still supposed to be socialist and all that stuff. So I get that. There's a balance in the middle. I'm obviously exaggerating for comedic effect, Varun, but I still hate ad agencies.
is it this perspective that led you to be a comedian? Is this because you wanted to kind of... Because you have a... you and I know each other for years. What I've always thought was interesting about the way you said things was that you always had an interesting perspective which wasn't necessarily everybody's perspective. Is that why?
I think so on some subconscious level. I don't think when I started out that was like my plan, whatever. But I think when I watched that movie, it all came together. What is the movie with the Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga one that...
Star is Born.
Star is Born. So there's a line where Cooper meets Lady Gaga on the streets. I mean, after he takes her to the sing, and they're singing on the streets in the middle of the night. Yeah. And he says, anybody can be a singer, but in order to be successful, you should have something to say. And you, my lady, I think, have something to say. Yeah. So I think when that line came out in the movie, I was like, oh wait, that's why I like being a comedian, because I have something to say. What I didn't know all these years was that I had something to say. And what is that something? I still honestly don't know fully. I'm exploring it,
which is fine, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it comes out. There's a lot of inner. Saurabh calls it Saurabh Pant. That is calls it nerd rage. He's like and when he said those words, they just stuck with me for the last
nerd
8
rage.
years. He said,
I like this term. I want to dig a little deeper.
Which is that as a chartered accountant, I felt stifled. I felt like I'm trying to do something that is not me. I'm a creative person. Why am I doing this CA-giri or whatever numbers?
I did mechanical
blah.
engineering.
Yeah, so you know how it feels. So I've gone to the extent of having nightly dreams where I've always wanted to get into a street fight just because, there's no particular reason. And he's like, that's just nerd rage, man. You just feel like you've been suppressed or you've been wronged. I think that's the right.
But why did you do chartered accountancy?
I was naive, young, didn't know my options. I just did what the family business was. My dad's a CA, brother's a CA, so I just followed. My mom's a lawyer. That was like, no way I'm doing that. So I think comedy is the closest I come to being a lawyer.
Considering you're a comedian, and the fact that the amount of, I'm not saying you get legal notices, but in terms of legal documents you would have run through in life, that might have been a better idea.
You know what? You're right, because my mom will never help me out if I do something wrong in comedy.
Yeah.
If somebody files a case against me, she's like, you're on your own, Kunal. I warned you. So that's not happening.
Kind of rewinding the clock, right? If you go back to when you were a CA, like you said, having nightmares, and then open mics happened, and then comedy happened.
Yeah.
How? was that journey?
Funnily, I had no dreams of being a comedian. I've watched comedy. I was working in Dubai, in London. I watched a bit of comedy back then, and then the Russell Peters viral video went out, and I was like, "Oh, this is interesting. It's funny." But I never thought I can be funny. I have a friend of mine, Parikshit. He is an MC, and he was doing comedy a little bit back in the day when there was Trafalgar Chalk in Bandra. It was the only place. There was a group called the Open Theatre. They call themselves the TOTS, TOTS, the Open Theatre. Okay. So they used to do open mics, which is both comedy, music, whatever, everything mixed. So he used to go for that regularly. And then when we watched Veer Das do Walking on Broken Das, Saurabh Pant is a college friend of both of us. So we watched him open for him, met him afterwards, and Parikshit was like, I really want to do comedy. How do I do this? And Saurabh was like, hey, in 3 months, we're doing this thing called Weird Ass Amateur Night. Come for it. It's an open mic. Just come.
I think Amateur Night does not get enough credit.
Yeah.
For a lot
what are you
of
talking
things,
about?
right?
All the first 8 winners of Amateur Nights are all the top comedians of today.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right.
it's
And I
just
remember
awesome.
going for Amateur Nights when they first started off. It was one of those things that you did not want to miss.
Yeah.
You'll also see so many people bomb so badly, but people still walk up, right? Which is
Still
actually
walk up and the all the big names, and you watching like pros
I wanted to do
Veer
it for
and Saurabh.
years, right? I think there's a small part of me still wants to do it weirdly enough.
Yeah. The closest you come is recording videos for comedians.
Yes, and doing which is a story we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get it.
We'll get to that. Yes, because we take credit for starting off
A lot of successful acts of today.
Acts of today.
So to finish my story, Parikshit said, fine, I'll come. And he told me, he's like, Kunal, I think you should do this. And I was like, whatever. And at that time, I was going through a difficult phase in my life astrologically, as my mom said. So I had to go to a temple. And that was when I got my first joke, which is I went to a Hanuman temple. I don't know whether you need to edit this out.
No.
But I went to a Hanuman temple and I had my first thought. I was like, that's a funny pose for a god. And I was like, all the other gods are just giving their blessing, and here's Hanuman flexing his muscles. He's like the Johnny Bravo of Indian mythology. And that was my first punchline. And I was like, this is funny. Okay.
How have we not got a legal notice yet?
And then, because I did this, 8 years, 9 years ago.
It's going to come back to you now.
And this is
going to come back to you now.
Hi, this is the Saurabh Pant speaking. He made the joke. And then that gave me, because I had a second thought and a third thought, I was like, you know what, I'll put these together and I'll do a 2 minutes on stage. And then Saurabh took me as an opening act. And then next thing you know, I'm traveling with him, spending lots of nights with Saurabh Pant.
And then you guys also, I remember at that point of time had to, and that's around the time we met as well.
Yeah, we met a good year and a half later, I think.
Yeah, and I remember that you guys were doing what was the initial days of the stand-up circuit, but also kind of figuring out other ways to kind of make money. Like, for instance, the first time you came on television was thanks to me and Rich, because we put you on television.
Yes.
And for people who don't know, there was this amazing show called Politics.
Are you sure it was Politics? I think it was some other
Politics
name.
was one of them,
Something
it was
else.
something else also.
Yeah.
Or I could be wrong as well. It could
something
be
like
another
that.
show. Basically what it was in those days, which is pretty much what Zoom has now, I'm guessing. I haven't seen Zoom in a long time.
Even in those days, it was modeled on the Hollywood basis.
Yeah. What we used to have is these people, and this is an actual story, right? Because you guys never came for the sourcing. Right?
Yeah, we didn't.
How you could source paparazzi footage those days was that you would have one or two of these guys who would be in these really small corners of the city. You wouldn't even imagine like some random corner in Kurla you would go to, and this guy would have this small place, and he would have all these small tapes of he's basically gone around the city trying to shoot every celebrity walking in and out of any place, and then you sat there, you ran through those tapes manually, asked him which clips you wanted, and he would charge you basis how many tapes you would take from him, right? So we would then come back and then work with you guys on writing a script.
These are the stories, and why did you guys do this clip? I remember one of the stories was when Katrina Kaif's sister, Isabel Kaif, was apparently going to come into was going to do a film. I don't know whether she finally
Which
did
means
it.
that she's actually been trying to come into the movies
Since
for a really long time.
Was this 2011?
Yeah.
I think this was maybe 12
Wow,
max.
she's been trying to break out for a really long time.
Yeah. And I remember my joke,
8
and
years,
I was like,
10 years.
she doesn't speak Hindi, so who is she gonna use for her dialogue writing? Google Translate. I remember that was my favorite joke in the whole show.
And I remember you guys were, you, Saurabh and Aditi were the talking heads in between voiceover and random footage of celebrities walking into press conferences, out of press conferences, into hotels, out of restaurants, which now we can get off Viral Bayani's Instagram account,
Yeah,
I'm
basically,
guessing.
yeah.
That was the manual Viral Bayani.
But at that time, it was path-breaking to consider bringing a comedian to comment on Bollywood stories.
Yeah.
You were like, wow, this is
It
so
didn't-
ahead of its
sadly,
time.
sadly, it was ahead of its time. It did not last very long. After 6 episodes,
But you know, I have this
or 8
saying
episodes, whatever it
that
was.
secretly every comedian's deepest, darkest, whatever goal is to be ahead of his time.
Yeah.
They if they don't make money in their lifetime and then they find out that they were really appreciated well after their death, they would be happy.
Because these are all they're all milestones of what you've actually done, right? Because you think about it now, it's so easy, right? You want to get footage of celebrities, get it off the internet.
Get it off the internet.
Then you have to go to Kurla. And
it was just old school where it wasn't even footage. A lot of it was just photographs that were
that
were moving on the screen.
So you had to figure out how to use photographs
top
you
left
got on
corner to the
Google.
top right corner.
Yeah, get those photographs off Google and figure a way to make a slideshow look interesting on television.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving ahead from that.
But that was I really enjoyed that show. It was the first I remember. I remember telling Saurabh that this is good because it's a writing exercise. We actually had to sit down
and look at those stories.
It's a brief and you have to write jokes on it and you have to get it right. And it was the first time they were like, oh wait, there's work involved in comedy as compared to just whatever came to my mind. And and this is one of the biggest problems with comedians, which is that we're lazy AF, right? We don't want to write and we just don't want to sit down and work. That's the biggest problem.
But is that also why the comedy is good? Because if you're working all the time...
True. But it's 2020, man. There's competition. Hello. This is why half of them are poor. Okay? They're struggling for open mic spots, let alone like doing 20 or 30 minute spots. You got to sit down and write every day.
Which is an interesting point, right? If you look at the comedy scene then, which was like few of y'all.
Yeah.
And look at the comedy scene now, which is pretty much feels like the entire country.
Yeah. And yet it's only so few.
And TikTok.
Hey, I'm on TikTok.
But TikTok, I'm talking about the other side of TikTok.
Course, yeah.
And how have things changed, not from the content perspective, but from just generally how you approach it?
As a creator?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I think everybody has found their own path. Okay, so let me put it this way. The 10 years that I have spent in comedy, I have gone left, right, up, down, all directions. I've tried everything that was possible at the time. I hated talking about the news. I do not like reading the news. It stresses me out. But I did a show called Comedy News Network. We did a show called The Bottom Line, which became EIC Outrage. Then I didn't really watch Bollywood much. We still did a show called The Ghantas, which I was part of. And, there was so much content.
It wasn't
that you
individual
can make.
As much as it was.
It wasn't. It was
something that needs to be done.
team-based. It was people came together, and like we were saying earlier off the mic, was that we needed each other back then as comics because there were just so few. And I remember Saurabh's basic premise of creating East India comedy or having 3 or 4 people in his collective is that we'll all get 2 friends each and we'll get more people in the crowd. That was the basic starting point. He's like, you know what, all I have to do is give them a basic, how to write joke kind of a 1 hour lecture and then let's do this, right? Yeah. But things have changed now. I think, audiences have their favorite comics. YouTube has completely changed everything.
True.
I have had to dig deep and think about, okay, what do I really want? I've quit my CA job already and I've switched careers. Now, I feel like every year I have to start from scratch because it's so different. So then I went back to basics, which is that let me talk about what I know. I think what you should write about is what you know best. Yeah. That's why I talk about, I talk about being an introvert. I talk about being a CA or how I feel when an incident. In a sense, observational comedy is both what you see as well as how you feel, right? I think that's basically where. So I talk a lot about that. And it works for me. I'm not a news comic. I'm not a current affairs comic. And I'm very happy not being one. I don't think there are no rules.
Yeah.
But the challenge is, how do I make money? Right?
Yeah.
Now that I haven't figured out. I think you need to get somebody else on this podcast to tell you how that works. But it's evolved to the extent that I think now people can talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah.
And yet you have to find the balance of, but what do the people want? Yeah. So that balance is really hard to figure out, man.
And, you mentioned Introverted, which I thought was the most I would say one of the most important points is the fact that people always assume that if someone is a creator or wants to do comedy, they are naturally an extrovert. Because
that's how you
exactly right. The portrayal is someone who can get on stage, someone who can do that. So the assumption is that you need to be an extrovert.
You need to put yourself out there. You need to do things, be in the limelight, blah blah blah.
Because also the cliche of the introvert is it's different from what the reality of it is, right? And a lot of people who I've spoken to, especially who are in colleges, etc., keep talking about the fact they're so worried about just putting anything out there. They're worried about being judged. They're worried about something. And to add to that, many of them are introverts, so it just becomes like a double. Yeah. So how do you how did you deal with being an introvert and then also creating stuff?
I did a lot of reading in the last 3 years. I did a lot of research about this. I mean, when I discovered that I was an introvert, it changed my life in the best way possible, because I suddenly understood that, that's why I yawn after 2 hours at a bar. It's not because I'm bored, it's that I'm having a physical reaction to having too many people around me for too long. I need alone time to rest, right? And once I figured that out, just everything changed. It suddenly made sense to me that when I'm sitting here, there's 5 people in this room, and I am on some level absorbing everybody's energies. Okay, and I'm absorbing everybody else's sort of thoughts and emotions or whatever, and that's draining, man. I read a lot about it. One is, of course, the rest time. But secondly, the best thing that I read about creators, and what I want to say about people who are worried about being an introvert, is that creators are always introverted. The creation process is an inside process. The marketing process is an extroverted process.
True.
Tons of authors of books, they will spend 6 months writing a novel. Not going to meet, apart from their maid and their wife, I don't think they're meeting anybody else, right? For 6 months, they're in a hole, they're in a cave, they're just doing their shit. And then when it comes to marketing, yes, they've psyched themselves up to say, okay, the next 3 months is about doing interviews, doing podcasts, talking to newspapers, blah, 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 or putting yourself out there. But the creation process itself has to be done alone. Otherwise, you're going to sound like everybody else. And that is what happened with comedy in the middle, which is that everybody sounded like everyone else. Everybody did the Modi joke, everybody did the Yo-Yo Honey Singh joke, everybody did the Ranbir Kapoor joke. And I'm like, dude, where is the original thought? It wasn't there because comedy became a clique.
You become Sunil Pal then.
And you were just hanging out in the green room and listening to each other's bits, and we're like, that's funny, and then you want to go home and write the same bit because somebody said it and it was funny. And I
should take it back. Sunil Pal is not funny, so maybe...
He was, in his own way. Come on. You can't judge art, Varun. Of all people, you should know this. And as you say, that introverts have fear of judgment.
But no, Sunil Pal is
like you,
Sunil Pal is not funny.
Advertisers like you, Varun.
Yes. There are other comedians who think are funny in the same space, but not Sunil Pal. There's something very weird about him anyway.
Yeah, I just think that the creation aspect is supposed to be solo. I don't think you need to work. Yes, there is you show your work to people you trust and who understand what you're trying to do, and then you rework it. But creation is always solo. And when I understood that, I was like, now what I'm going to do now is I wake up in the morning, my phone's in the other room, and I'm working for 4 hours. I don't care what happens. I'm writing for 4 hours. Or whatever it is, I'm reading or I'm making a tweet or whatever it is. I'm doing something on my own, no phones. And that just changed everything for me.
Help you find your voice better? Would you say that?
100%. I started listening to what is my actual voice as compared to what is... when you're starting out, obviously the people you hang out with influence your comedy. Like Saurabh is basically my mentor and I became him at some point, which was good. But over an extended period of time, it doesn't work because you're not being true to yourself. And when I realized that slowly over the years, but when it hit me that, I need alone time to create, then everything started falling in place. I would never have written the Amazon special that's out there called Done. I would never have written that as long as I had the influence of other comics. I did that after I just disappeared for 6 months. And then I created that special. So it's
your special was interesting, right? Because when I watched it, it didn't feel like anything I had seen before because it was very silent. The energy was the opposite of what you would expect. Slow, relaxed. And then later when I understood, then initially I was like, I know you tried to do something that is not what the regular is.
I tried very hard to be different.
But what I think made more sense when it made real sense to me was when the introvert part came out, right?
Is it?
I said then
Okay.
then it kind of adds up.
That's interesting.
Because you almost like it's like you kind of created a safe space for you to kind of be yourself, yet do a special.
Yeah.
Is what it kind of felt like when I look back at it.
I didn't think of it that way, but you're right. I think the whole feel and the whole look of it is exactly that. It is an introvert speaking up. For one thing, I think I was at that phase in my life when I was just discovering this about me, and I wanted to bring it out in the immediate next piece of content that I was creating, which happened to be this. But also, I looked at all the comedy specials on Amazon and even Netflix, and I was like, they all look the same. They're bright, they're loud, there's a whole applause break, there's this this, oh, welcome on stage, da-da-da, stand up, da-da-da-da, hey, ye hota hai, da-da-da-da-da. That pace of jokes was just like, just let me sit and listen and process the joke. Let me process the joke, please. Because I then started reading a lot about what works on camera and what works on live. They're two very different things. I think people who on camera need a little extra, when you're watching it on television or on your laptop, you need that extra second to process a joke.
True.
Otherwise, you're just like, good point. But you don't really go, ha-ha, right? That's the how do you bring that ha-ha? Is that keeping that extra pause? Maybe I went a little overboard. I was too slow. But I kept a dimly lit room. I changed my pace. The show wasn't linear. I didn't start... I started in the middle of my show.
Yeah.
I was on stage. It was a close-up shot. Something that nobody's ever done. And I was like, you know what? Let's break all the rules. Let's just try and see if it works. I don't think it worked, honestly, because I don't think... like I said, I'm glad to be one of the few where my special was ahead of its time. I really appreciate that. I think people will realize when I'm on my deathbed that, Kunal, you know that show that you did? Yeah, it was that back then in 2019. Not bad. But I'm glad I tried something different. I think there's a whole... There's what they say, like you can either do something first or you can do something second and make it better.
Yeah.
I just tried something first. Maybe it didn't work. Maybe it did. I don't know. It's okay. I'm glad I got that out of my system. And I'm quite happy with it, man. I'm proud of it. It's different.
There's a bunch more things I want to kind of dig into, right? But I do know we need to go for a break. So I'm just going to do that and we'll be right back with advertising instead.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, why aren't you? We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money and HDFC Life. We appreciate our sponsors, and hey, this doesn't happen without them. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by Harshal Karia, founder and MD at Shebang, to talk about managing your workforces and building businesses around them. Harshal was also an earlier episode of Shunya One. You guys should check that out. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by Piyush Sarkar, painter, poetess, and actor, to talk about how she started in all of these different fields. On Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Janice and Anirudh talk Netflix's TV show Sex Education. On Edges and Sledges, DJ talks to Adam Bell from the New Zealand-based Cricketers podcast. They talk about the India versus New Zealand ODI series and identify the big performers from both sides. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks about being open to exploring mysticism and spirituality. On the Empowering series, Zarina is joined by actor and storyteller Sheena Khalid to talk about her theatre journey. On Golgappa, tune into a Laugh Riot episode where host Tripti talks to Karan and Neil from Bhadipa. On our Kannada podcast Thale Harate, Ramya Bhaskar and Sridhar Pabisetti talk to Ganesh and Pawan about reimagining school education for Industry 4.0. On Tapri Tales, Madhuri tells a tale of her struggle with keeping cockroaches away from the kitchen while wondering why there are no cockroaches in her mother's kitchen. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ayushi and Ritasha talk about decisions and choices that we make based on religion or superstitions versus logic and science. And with that, let's get you back to your show.
Welcome back to Advertising is Dead. See, now I can say welcome back.
Now you can say welcome back, Varun.
Yes.
Well done. You
to
got it
Advertising
right.
is Dead. It's little Kunal. So Kunal, going back into the introverted creator.
Yes.
And the fact that you've started speaking a lot more about it. What I think is important for a lot of people kind of starting off to realize, and what you kind of putting out there, is the fact that you don't have to conform to be a creator. You don't have to do what everyone else is doing. You have to find your own voice.
In fact, it's the exact opposite. You have to do something unique, and for that, we're all snowflakes, right, Varun? We're all so unique, right? So tap into that uniqueness.
Yeah.
Like spend an hour of silence a day and listen to your voice, and you'll definitely do something different. Create something different.
But the fact that you're an introvert, does that also then kind of... Because let me actually take a couple of steps back. How do you define someone being an introvert? Let's go there, right? Because the thing is,
I've read so many books on
because
this.
I'll tell you what, many times you get confused, especially with mental health and how we segment ourselves now finally being something we can talk about. There was a time till very recently when I thought I had ADD.
Yeah.
But I don't have attention deficiency. I have something else which is called autonomy, right? Which is what I realized. So autonomy is a state where, and it might feel very generic, but basically if someone's asking you to do something, your natural response is, no, you told me to do something, so I won't do it. But you should want to do it, even an ounce, for you to actually be fully involved in it. Otherwise your mind zones out of it.
Okay.
So you should
be involved.
You should feel inside yourself that this is something that should demand your attention.
Okay.
Which feels like ADHD, ADD in that sense, but not necessarily, because if I'm really focused, I can really focus on something, but I can easily very quickly switch off.
Switch off as well.
Right. Similar thing, right? So I've heard many people say, "Oh, I'm an introvert" or "I'm an extrovert," but I'm like, do they really know what that means?
So in the true definition, after reading many books, and I say many at least, which is 5 or 6 books about introversion, the true definition is where you get your energy from, which is that extroverts get their energy from other people, and introverts get it from themselves, from silence, from nature. So the more silent time you spend, the more you recharge. Now, typically, because of the way introverts are, they are more likely, which is again, there's a 70 to 130 range kind of a thing, that you're more likely to be a sensitive person, because when you walk into a room, you absorb people's energy. You're more likely to be, you don't initiate conversation, a little quieter. You're a little shy. You tend to do things by yourself. You struggle to work with other people. So these are all sort of side things, and in the Venn diagram of things, they're overlapping with other aspects of this thing. But in the pure sense, it is where you get your energy from. Now, like, there are a few books that I swear by. There's a book called Quiet by Susan Cain. There's a book called The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron. These are all books that just totally changed my perspective. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I did a lot of personality tests. I've done the MBTI, Myers-Briggs personality type. I'm an INFJ, which is introvert, intuitive, feeling, judging person. And I have all the worst qualities, which makes me like, I'm like the snowflake of snowflakes. Like, just the most, you can't even imagine replicating this. So, and all these things, they suddenly realize, this is why I feel so out of, I don't feel like I fit in. Right. And I always feel like people will not understand where I come from. Always. And when I learned to accept that, it's when I was like, oh, now that I know who I am, I know that what I create is worth it. And therefore I'm ready to put it out. And that was the process, which took years. Right. The process is not, people come and just put it out, man. Kunal, just put out that joke. It's funny. I was like, no, I have to be ready myself. If I'm not ready with it, then I can't do it. Or, hey, put out that meme. It's hilarious. I was like, no, there's just still some, I'm not sure yet, And that comes from an internal thing, and it's an internal compass that I can't stop.
Does that make it tougher than if you're dealing with an audience, dealing with fans, dealing with people who want to keep interacting with you?
It is. Today's time, like with the whole social media thing, you have to be, like they say, you have to, in quotes, be in everybody's face. You have to be relevant, as the word is. And I'm just like, you know what? I don't care. I'm just doing what works for me. For example, I do not reply to negative comments. I just ignore them, and I give a like or I reply thank you to a positive comment, and that is my level of interaction with fans or whoever, commenters or whatever you want to call them. I don't have to do anything more than that. Even my social media, I'm just putting out content, and I monitor how many likes it gets and blah blah, and then beyond that I don't really need to worry too much. I can take a step back and strategize and say, oh, my last YouTube clip got X views, this got X plus 10, great, maybe there's something better. But that's just normal analytical thing. I don't have to ask my fans for that, And even when I do interact with fans, for anybody who see me on Instagram, is that I do a lot of question and answers about philosophical stuff, like I ask questions about relationship and about life and mental health and stuff like that, and that's my comfort space, and I'm okay talking to people about that, because I think it's because like I've done my homework and I've gone through it myself, and as they say, you want to talk about things that you know, rather than trying to fake it.
Yeah.
There's this whole fake it until you make it is the worst thing that anybody could ever.
We're getting back to taglines.
Yeah, I'm sick
Where
of it.
we started this episode.
This is all exactly. This is the kind of stuff that.
So I hate this term called the hustle culture, right? I hate it because I'm like.
But it's true, isn't it? People want to hustle all the time, right? That's what they want. That's what is expected of them.
It's just so exhausting. Like,
it is.
You know, the thing is, so a while back, I think early in the year, I posted saying, okay, maybe I want to start. I putting some content out on YouTube, want to do video, right? And I started experimenting with things, and I was just like a couple of tests which I did, and I was trying to figure out the right content. But at some point, you go down a rabbit hole of overthinking, but also like over creating too many things, and then over analyzing. Like I made my account a creator account for the last 3 months. I switched it off this weekend because I said I'm done with it.
Business is better than creator, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, I'll maybe try that now. Okay. And what I realized was I was overthinking things that I didn't have to consider, right? And I have this problem where I need to respond to anybody who messages. So 99.9% of the time anybody messages on any social platform, I will respond to them. I'll try to help them in any way possible, right? Which is an innate problem because at some point when that becomes a lot of people, the fact that I haven't responded to 5 people or that I forgot to send someone something which I said they will send them.
It's like you said, it's a rabbit hole you're going down.
So then literally at some point I turned around and said, 1 second, maybe I need to like pause. Maybe I'll take a step back and like not over stress about. Which is why I took the stats off. I don't look at the stats anymore as of this weekend. We are on Monday, so it's
you removed the statistic
on this weekend.
Oh wow, okay.
I took it off. I'm not looking at it.
It's good.
Yeah, I said it's fine. I'll just put out whatever I have to put out. Videos will still happen, but I won't do what I thought I was going to do. Because I didn't want to become Gary Vaynerchuk.
Replying to everybody all the time isn't that, doesn't it use up a lot of your time? What happened to actual creation?
So what I've realized, I enjoy the most about doing this podcast, right? And also with the fact that where we've kind of brought Gitch to over the last 10 years, is that there are a lot of people who kind of either starting off in the whole advertising, marketing, content space, people who kind of are in college, kind of someone who's working somewhere else, someone wants to switch streams, and they all have questions, right? And no one really answers those questions.
True.
And I was like, maybe I can. And when I don't know the answer, I say I don't know the answer.
Okay.
Where I sometimes get stuck and I've made my peace with not being stuck is the fact someone's actually looking for a job and try to connect them to places and stuff like that. I can't get them that job. I can only get them to that place, right? And that took some time for me to kind of get used to saying, okay, when I'm not, because at some point my HR sat me down and said, I know you're getting us a lot of profiles, but we'll only be able to hire the good ones, and which I think was fair. And yeah, so
this thing of helping people, you do realize that you are also people, right?
Yeah. I know.
And that line that I read somewhere is that remember that when you're helping people, you are also people. Therefore, help yourself as well. Yeah. It really made a difference, and that's what my morning 4 hours is about. I was like, I love everybody. I do genuinely love humankind and all that. But if I am not going to get my time to create for 2 hours, 4 hours, 1 hour, whatever it is, I'm not going to be happy for the remaining 20 hours of the day. Yeah. I'm going to be thinking about, I should have done that, because it's a thing, unless you're mentally balanced, how are you going to help other people? True. So it's basics. Yeah. It's hard for people. It's hard for people like you and me who like helping people, because that's very
also for
natural.
me it's a little tricky, because I think in a very weird way I'm in an initial stage of being a creator, because it's been like a year old of the podcast. But before that I was literally a person who's like, when you're running a company, it's much simpler.
Yes, you're getting things done rather than doing it themselves. Than trying to be a creator and being front-facing, right? Yes. And that's what, like, at some point I just sit down Can I tell you how simple being a creator is?
Yes.
Because I like that you said simple and not easy. I mean, they're two different things. It's being a creator is simple. You create. It's really that's simple. True. So you, like, the fact that you're here every week and you're recording an episode, great. After that, you're thinking about the next thing that you want to create, which is the next episode or the next video or the next whatever. Create. You focus on that. You do your 2 hours a day on creating, and then you're done.
So then your mind then works in a space of saying, okay, there's the episode out now. What can you do as content around it? What can I do on social around it?
Sure.
Then you're saying, okay, I'm talking about X number of things. Are there more things that I can share
Varun,
which are in the
come
same
on,
space?
man. You know the Pareto principle,
I know
right?
that. So I curate that. So I also have a problem being plugged in endlessly, right? So if I told anybody what my screen time was because of what phones tell you now,
Right,
they will shout at me because I'm close to 7.5 hours a day of screen
Just
time.
on your cell phone?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I also listen to, I don't know if I think they count listening to stuff as well.
Yeah, of course. If it's playing in the background, that's also counted.
yeah,
So you listen to
7.5
like
hours.
music or podcasts.
My average is
whatever.
about 6.5 to
That's
7.5.
Well, you know, don't get me wrong. I think it's also good because you're really with it and stuff. But when it starts interfering with the creation, that's the problem.
And this is
I'm
after I
telling you-
switched off notifications on social platforms, right? And this is like I have no notifications, so nothing. I don't even in most of them I don't even get that one
that
red thing on top.
with
Yeah,
the
I don't even get that.
24 or the 72.
But I realized maybe that makes me go more. I'm like, oh, do you have I gotten something?
Oh wow! But I really that aspect was the hardest for me as well. When I discovered that I'm introvert, I had to start genuinely focus on the priority, which is create. Everything else is the Pareto principle, 80-20, which is 80% of your work gets done. If you just spend that 2 hours a day writing, everything else falls into place. Like it's not like between replying to one YouTube comment or whatever and writing a joke or an idea next to there's no match which one is more important. It's the Eisenhower matrix.
No.
The Eisenhower priority matrix.
Man, you read a lot about this stuff.
I love it, man. I'm a full-on self-help philosophy psychology nerd. I think anybody who's read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People will know it. It's basically the x-axis is important, so not important and important, and the y-axis is not urgent and urgent. And people think that the most important box in the 4 out of the 4 is important and urgent. But that's wrong. The most important box out of the 4 is important and not urgent. So for example, for somebody who's in the finance business, reading the business section of the newspaper is extremely important, even though it's not urgent, because you know what's going on in the industry right now. That has to be a priority over something like a phone call. That's just your phone's ringing and you have this gut instinct to pick up the phone because it could be something urgent.
Hello, sir.
Forget it. It's not. Yeah. Even if it is important. Even if it is urgent or important, even if it's important, and it's maybe your wife calling you to say that your house is burning down, that's a different story. You have some rules around it.
My house ain't burning down.
But you know what I'm saying? Like there's a way to balance it out. And doing the podcast or doing the 2 hours of writing or getting on stage for me is far more important than sitting in the green room chatting with Antariksh about what he could do next. Hey man, these are the jokes, I like this. That's fine. You can do it once in a while. I can do it once a month when I'm hanging with him off stage. But if I've not got my on stage time, I'm not going to be a successful comic or anything. Focus one thing.
So one thing is never a possibility with the way my mind works. I have to do 50 things at the same time.
I really hope that you get over this. I genuinely do.
Over time, I've let some things go by. So my the good and the bad part about how I've learned to deal with things is I will do something and I will see if it interests me. If it doesn't interest me, my mind anyway switches out of it. So So for instance, I thought, okay, will I do a vlog? For instance, no. Right. I thought about it. I tried. I literally picked it up and I said, I know I won't be able to do it. It's not naturally something I would do.
Correct. Same.
Then can I ever be a Gary Vaynerchuk for anybody who has seen Gary
amazing.
Vaynerchuk?
I love him.
Right? Yeah.
He's so
but
good.
I'm not me, right? Could it be anybody who follows Matt D'Avella on YouTube? Who's this guy who's actually a minimalist? So he's actually.
Did he do the documentary on Netflix, Minimalism?
He was one of the guys who shot it.
One of the guys who shot it, yeah. Okay.
So he basically has a YouTube channel which is very interesting. The tone, and you might actually enjoy it.
I love it.
It's very subdued. But what he talks about is that, so him and there's another one I follow, where they really talk about the kind of things you can do to kind of sort your life out if you are a minimalist, if you want to have thought process. Like he tries stuff out. He tries to journal every day for a year. He will try to have only cold showers for 3 months. He'll say, I woke up at like 5 a.m. for 3 months and try to figure out if that helps. So he tries stuff which people say makes you better.
So this is a episodic format.
No, he just literally it's a weekly vlog, a video that comes out. But because he's also a DOP and a filmmaker, the visual is very calming. But the content's really, the tone is great, right? It's not someone
I
who
loved that documentary, Minimalism. It really impacted
and
me
you know,
strongly.
so that from, and I find okay, this is the tone I can relate to. So then what is there? So I think that you plan so long to do one thing, and like you said, like you're not ready for it. Right? When someone says, hey, why, you bought these 2 GoPros like in Jan. Why have you not put anything out yet? I'm like, it's Jan. I don't think I'll put anything out till May. Yeah. Right? Because I want to also figure out, for me, the good part at least with after getting married and having a kid is that I don't want any of these things to compromise that time. With Leia.
And that's a priority.
Who as of this weekend has become a viral sensation because of one clip I put up of hers.
Who has?
So I put a clip of my daughter out where she and I were down in the playground, and then she turns around and she says that, Papa, she started this thing where she says, Papa, put your phone away.
Right.
She's 2.5. She's like, Papa, put your phone away. I said, I'm taking a video of you. She's like, put phone away. Right. And she struts off and says, wasting time.
Nice.
Right. I put it up and literally
at 2.5 she has got the same philosophical genius that I have managed to learn in the last 3 years after many months of therapy and lots of books.
Yeah.
Right? She's got you down.
So now what I do is then she's one of the only people who can get me to like put my phone away, put it face down, and because she'll call it out. I think a lot of times we don't really.
But I feel like, you talked about the minimalist tone. It is a tone that attracts you, and I think that's just you're probably just basically a very visual person. That's why it attracts you. But the tone was the result of a feeling or a thought. It is not the feeling itself. So he came up with that tone because of how he thought about minimalism.
That's how he spoke, right? It's just generally the personality is just that. It's not a loud. It's not a loud personality. It's not like.
I don't think that there's a black and white with introversion as well, and it's a well-known fact that people are on. It's a spectrum basically. So there are days when I really need people around, and I'm leaning towards introversion, and I'm sure you also probably are somewhere in the middle, which is your ambiversion kind of a thing.
Yeah, so I have days when I'm supremely social, but I'll also switch off. Like
it's not the social. I mean, even it's things like you're unable to prioritize on that one thing that you want to do because you like replying to people, or you like doing these small things. Tuck.
Yeah.
Those things, it's a need because of your nature, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's the basic stuff of like what's your 1 month goal, 1 year goal, 5 year goal kind of a thing.
So what's your 1 month goal, 1 year goal, 5 year goal?
I have a goal for 2020. I have 3 goals. It's health, content, and relationships. That's basically what I'm focusing on. I quit cigarettes on the 1st of Jan.
Oh, congratulations.
It's been 2 months. Thank you.
I'm 10 years cold turkey, so... Yeah,
10 years? That's amazing.
10 years,
That's great.
I mean, occasional somewhere has happened, but now my throat just says no.
It just says, exactly. Yeah. But I've not even touched a cigarette or anything like that. I am focusing on my just general diet, watching what I eat, etc. Content is what I want to create. I realize that for me, what works is less is more. So let me just do fewer things, which is just stand up. I love stand up. I'm not going to change that. I've just literally spent the last 3 months writing bits, 3-minute bits, 4-minute bits, and just releasing it, recording it at a regular comedy club, and just putting it out on my YouTube channel. That's it. There's nothing beyond. I don't want to overthink this.
Yeah.
There was this plan that I do 1 a week. I didn't do it for 2 weeks, and that's okay. Right? I may still, get back on the horse when you can.
Yeah.
And just relationships is basically just want to get back to like in touch with friends who matter, like getting the right support system in your life, because I think with every transition that you have in your life, you need that help. So getting back to roots with parents and siblings and all that stuff. So these are my 3 very high level goals. There's no real quantification, but you just focus on them, and that's. I look at my diary. I have a diary, daily diary, and when I say diary, I mean like a planner. And I'm like every day.
You don't dear diary.
I journal as well. I journal as well. I have that. I have an Excel sheet, which is my.
I've been trying to journal for 2 years.
It's the best thing that happened to me, man.
6 months.
It's
like,
the best.
I remember. Let me journal one
every day. Maybe 6 times a week if I might miss on a one-off day here and there, but basically it's every day. I also have an Excel sheet which is a list of everything that I could possibly do. One of the very interesting things when you get caught up in, let's say you've been like binge watching something for a long time, and then you just like, oh shit, I've been watching for too long, let me just turn this off, I'm irritated. And then you turn it off, and for the first 30 seconds you're like, okay, but now what do I do?
Exactly.
Right? So now what do? I have a list. I have a list which says go for a walk, exercise, meditate, write, journal, read, whatever, like go for play a sport, call a friend, just that list, and I give myself a point every time I do one of those things.
When you say journal, right, you should, again, going back to that Matt Diavela's thing, he has this way of journaling which I find so interesting, where you can actually map out what you're going to do every day.
Okay.
He makes you set goals for every like couple of months and so on and so forth, but you kind of putting up every day, have I done these things?
Correct.
So it's like, and it's not just like a physical goal, it's almost like an emotional goal as well, right? So, okay, I need to pay attention to my partner.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, when he's sitting down, he's literally ticking a checklist.
That's
his
amazing.
journal, he's
That's what I
literally,
do.
have I done all these things I'm supposed to do as a human being? And many times he said, you put that out there, then you are not asking your mind to remind you every time. You know at the end of the day, you've done it or you've not done it.
Not only that, if you've seen Simon Sinek, you know Simon Sinek is very famous, quite a bit about millennials, whatever.
Yeah.
And he talks about how we're getting dopamine hits, right? Which is that every time you get a notification on Instagram, you get a dopamine hit, and that's why you're constantly attracted to that, because dopamine is a happy kind of a hormone. What the ticking does of your to-do list is that you're giving yourself a dopamine hit because you just checked something off your to-do list.
Correct.
So your dopamine is in your control as compared to at the mercy of an Insta or a Facebook.
Yeah.
And that is how you make long-lasting changes. That's why to-do lists are just so, like, it's the go-to thing for everything. You ask any psychology, philosophy or self-help guru, they will tell you make a to-do list. It's the most basic. Planning and all the more advanced form of a to-do list. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever.
So, you know these three buckets you spoke about, which was health, content and relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's a clear way, because what I actually was going to ask you right after this was that if I was a young creator today, what are the three things? If I was a young creator today who was just starting off, what are the three things I need to focus on? That is literally what it is.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I would say
you
that.
gave the answer before I could ask the question.
Although the health is not important.
Of course it is. Of course,
I mean, it's not essential to be a creator.
If
it's
I am
just
not
essential
in
to be a
the
human being.
gym 5 to 6 days a week, my body just says, "What is wrong with you?" Right?
But that's because we're like 40 and over the hill.
I'm not 40 yet.
Almost, in that range. When you say young creator, I assume 21, 22-year-old, right?
Yes.
For them,
17, 18 also maybe.
Oh, that's a great time to be alive.
Yeah.
Right? Because their health just takes care of itself. It's amazing.
No, please eat healthy when you're 16, 17.
No, man.
Eat your broccoli.
I'm with Gary Vee on this, which is in your 20s, you try every damn thing.
Gary Vee right now looks like he's going to die. Like he'll fall flat on his face, and while he's passed out in his face, he'll still be saying, hustle, like go.
I don't care. I love his gab. Yeah. He's truly got the gift of the gab, and it's
so
amazing.
Wild. I think now he's gone delirious. Like he says, like, how he speaks now. He's like, I don't. Like yesterday's video, he's saying, I don't want people to hate me. I know they think I'm obnoxious. I don't want. Like he's now talking to himself.
He talks to himself. That's true. On his podcast, he's basically talking to himself. Yeah. Gary Vee was a big turning point for me.
Yeah.
He once casually in one of his videos mentioned that you don't understand what you're consuming online. You don't realize what impact it has on you. And then I started noticing a lot. I started following a few of these, the good quote and all those kind of these things on Instagram. And I realized that that's also your diet, right? What you consume is your diet. And a lot of us are so habituated to waking up and just picking up your phone and going through Instagram notifications. And it's terrible. You're not like Mel Robbins, another motivation speaker I follow, is you're not even vertical. Right? And you're checking your messages. Get up, make yourself a cup of tea, for God's sake. Do something. So when I changed my diet of what I consume, I've unfollowed everybody. I've unfollowed the news. I hate the news. It is the most stressful thing I ever consume in my life. And all I follow are like this positive stuff. And so even if I do pick up the phone and I'm still lying down, within 3 or 4 thumb swipes of looking at content, I have gotten enough content in my brain to say, you need to get up and do something. Rather than just lying down. And otherwise you spend 2 hours in the bed. On the bed, just lying around. So I changed what I consume online, and it's made my life so much better. A lot of people are like, but you got to know what the competition is doing, right? I'm like, I'll figure it out when I need to.
Maybe not as well, because then you try to do what they're doing.
Yes, so that's the That you
that's
said
a-
it.
that's
You
a
said
bigger
it. You
problem.
said it.
The
But
fact
you
that-
do also need to look at it. But it's more in
But
my
if you
control.
overconsume it-
Yeah, that's the challenge. When you overconsume,
It's like I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I don't listen to any podcast that is in the same space as what this show is.
exactly,
I
and
don't.
that's the biggest problem with comedians. They just consume comedy.
Yeah.
They don't consume something outside of comedy. What the hell are you going to write about other than what somebody else's premise is?
Like I'm listening to the Wolverine podcast series right now, which Marvel and Stitcher put out.
Yeah.
So well made, and it's so interesting because I'm like, fiction as a podcast is so beautiful, right? If you do it right.
If you do it right.
If you do it right.
have the
The trick,
budgets,
the
the
trick
money.
is to do it right.
I'm trying to do a basic scripted one-man podcast, and I'm struggling so much with it. It's so hard
No,
to
it's
just speed best, and money is not going to help either. You need the brains and the time.
that's the beauty of podcast, right? It's actually all about I found it to be one of the purest creation processes.
I love it.
It's
Yeah,
literally just like,
that's the right word, and that's why I like stand-up as well, because it's the purest form of creating. Like a lot of people ask me, like, "Tu script writer kyun nahi banta hai?" I'm like, "Nahi hota mere se." It's a whole new art form. You want me to write dialogues? Forget about it. I don't think that way. I quit my CA job of 10 years. You want me to learn a third skill? Forget about it, dude. I'm not doing that. It's just too much. I tried it, and I was like, no, it's not worth it.
now, since you hate Bollywood, I will go to our last part, which is which is inspired from Bollywood, which is called humans.
Rapid fire.
Humans.
Coffee hamper.
It's called humans of advertising.
Okay.
It's like a rapid fire. It's not rapid at all.
Humans of?
Advertising.
Okay.
What
Is it a quiz?
It's not a quiz. It's just it's semi-rapid questions, which not so rapid answers and digressions.
Best. Exactly how I talk normally.
Most people who know you, if what would they be surprised to know that you consume a lot of?
Motivation quotes is the number one thing. They're like, yeah, really? You're that guy? I was like, yeah, man, I just love it. And I make fun of it also sometimes on stage, but because I want to share that about it. But I follow a lot of good positive content. And this is all recent. It's like about a 2 years old kind of a thing. I think people have probably guessed that I consume a lot of rom-com. I love rom-coms.
Yeah?
Yeah. I completely love it.
What's your favorite rom-com?
Favorite? Aisa,
In recent times. What is the last one you enjoyed the most?
I don't know. Everything's a rom-com to me now. I recently watched this really old film called Joe Somebody. It's with Tim Allen, who's a comedian, and it's also it's a very interesting story about a guy who gets he gets slapped around by the office bully, and then he takes it upon himself to sort of do a rematch with this guy, and he starts training and all that stuff. It's a really nice story. One of those few movies where, one of those many movies that I cried at the end for 15 minutes along with the ending scene.
Nice.
But that's just me. That's who I am. So I love rom-coms. I realize dramas and thrillers stress me the hell out. If I watch a drama,
I can't watch horror.
Horror though is okay.
I can't.
But
I don't
thrillers. And
I got
drama,
scared in Ragini Mein Miss. Okay, so I'm like that. I'm that
I
person.
didn't watch that because I don't watch Bollywood. But the thing with me with thrillers and drama is that
Why do you not watch Bollywood?
I can't sleep. But it's the same.
But no, now it's better.
It's better.
There's so
but
many better movies now.
You're right.
Although I'm an old Bollywood buff, so I'm the opposite. I watched Tridev 40 times.
I don't
I've
think
not counted, but I just
can't-
said 40.
If you're going to ask me this question and you want a right answer, I don't have it. I think a lot of what our decisions are very subconscious.
You just
and
haven't liked what you've seen.
Yeah, I think it's the same, and this whole Naach Gana and this exaggeration and this whole it's not real at all. It doesn't seem authentic. I've seen exaggeration. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like Marvel's Avengers is authentic, but there are real.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, just everybody just creating circles like Doctor Strange. But I don't know. I think when I was young in my teens, I really got hooked by Friends, and it was my first oh wow, American content is amazing. And then I think it kind of stuck with me. I don't think there's any major reason other than that. And also probably I'm a South Bombay Catholic school Brahmin brat. So those things kind of add to my I speak in English at home, and it's my first language and all those things. So many reasons.
What can you whip up in an instant? Can be anything. Can be food. Can be
not even a sentence.
Can be food. Can be a thing. Can be anything. A motivational quote.
No, I don't know. I'm very bad at doing things. I'm a very planned person. Very planned. Improv is awful. I'm very bad at it.
Yeah.
I make great chai.
Okay. So then chai.
Yeah, it'll take me the 4.5 minutes that it takes to make chai.
And you obviously read a lot.
I read a lot.
So what recommendations in recent reads?
Non-fiction, man. I would read... for psychology, I would recommend Quiet by Susan Cain, The Secret Power of Introverts. Autobiographies, Andre Agassi's Open was outstanding. I love it. There's this whole love-hate relationship he has with tennis, which is beautiful. And I would say self-help. I'm currently reading a book called Claim Your Power by Maston Kipp. He's also a guy who's done a lot of he's got a social media account of this thing. I think that's basically it. I picked up I finished Sapiens. I've got Homo Deus. I still haven't started it. It's just too much.
I still sleep through Sapiens because I have an audiobook, which is not a great idea.
The other guy I'm struggling to read is Robert Greene. His books are like 2,000 pages and they're small text, small font. So I'm really struggling with it. But he has a book called The Art of Seduction, and he has The Laws of Human Nature. Again, very heavy. This is what I read, man. I read non-fiction.
And so is that the kind of podcast you listen to as well? What kind of podcast do you listen to?
I do. I love Freakonomics. I listen to there's this thing called the INFJ podcast. Sorry, the Introvert podcast. The Introvert podcast I follow, and the Psychology podcast. Those are my 3 big ones. And Mark Maron, who is basically a therapist.
He's
honestly.
amazing.
He's just amazing. He's a therapist and a patient all in one. And you just
his
figure out...
podcast is so interesting.
It's so good.
One of the first ones I got hooked onto.
There's this guy, Neil Brennan, the comic. He says, I remember in one of his podcasts, he's telling Mark Maron, he's like, you're a really good interviewer. I don't think you understand how you've made people say things that they would never say to anybody else in a public place. Mark Maron has this thing of getting it out of them. It's amazing.
One of the best episodes to listen to Mark Maron on is Conan O'Brien has this podcast called Conan Needs a Friend.
Conan Needs a Friend, yeah.
Mark
he
comes
gets Mark
on the show.
On it. Yeah. I've heard
that episode and the episode where Jeff Goldblum come on, those are two,
Jeff
Goldblum is amazing as well.
Yeah.
And considering we started this episode about talking about why you hate ad agencies, why will advertising not die?
Why will advertising not die? Because we're in Maslow's need hierarchy theory, that's esteem needs right now, because we have everything in our life, right? Basic needs, social needs, security needs, all taken care of. All we have is this superficial shit. So that's what people are gonna consume until there's the next apocalypse, and then we're back to scrounging for food. And as they say in what is that movie? Where there's goes into space and time bending and why am I? Interstellar. Thank you, Interstellar. Yeah. Right?
Off the mic response from Antriksh. Well played.
Thanks so much, Antriksh. This movie starts with the fact that there's no food. Right? Until we reach that point, we're going to continue to need advertising.
Yeah, and hopefully never make that Burger King thing again. It has made me not want to have...
Burger King thing?
So Burger King did this ad, which actually someone asked me to comment on, but I'm going to say this. So
the Valentine's Day one.
So they basically, people were saying, there's this thing, internet trend that started where people kept leaving fast food around and said how long it took for it to fully disintegrate, right? Because of the fact that, and because there's so many artificial things in there, a lot of it never really went away. Like a lot of the stuff is so artificial stays.
Yeah.
So Burger King does this ad, which is literally about day 1 of their burger and day 34 of their burger, and it's got like fungus and it's got mold and all that stuff on it, showing the fact that it's pure and it has only natural ingredients.
Lol, Max.
But I am like, fair enough, interesting insight. But whenever I look at a Burger King burger now, all I will think of is fungus.
That makes total sense. Yeah. I don't think I needed to see the ad to believe that.
My favorite response to that was I think Nando's, who put up a photo of saying the Burger King thing saying their burger after 34 days.
Yeah.
And an empty plate saying our burger after 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Nice. Well played.
Which was phenomenally played.
Well played.
Yeah. And so many others have done that. Like everybody's going to jump onto that. And they're really proud about it. I'm sure they'll win awards for it, but I think it's terrible because just took the it's not, I don't know.
First of all, it's not even true. Have you seen Super Size Me?
Yeah.
That's enough. Yeah. That's enough.
It's going to go a whole different conversation.
Totally different conversation, yeah.
Thanks for doing this, man. I'm so happy.
Of course, man. I'm so happy to be here.
This becomes such a... and I think it's great insight for anyone who's not even an introvert, anyone who's creating and kind of has these things going on in your head. to kind of hear it from
I
someone
mean,
like
to be honest, I've got these insights myself only in the last 3 years because I don't know who I was before that. I was just some other guy.
Yeah.
I don't know who that person was. And now I'm like, oh, wait, this is me. Until I change again.
Perfect. Which is the way to be. Yeah, and that's it for this episode of Advertising is Dead.
Every week comes a show where 3 people come together to tell you about stuff they like. A movie, a TV show, a book, and other stuff. Tune in every Monday on the IVM Podcast app to IVM Likes. Batman approves this message. Thank you, Batman.
With us.
Join us as we stop at various stations and discuss different topics that seem to be bothering us and hopefully
Dating,
you as well.
relationships, beauty, just being an adult, lots of different things.
We don't have a great grip on it, but we've done okay so far.
Catch Agla Station Adulthood every Thursday on the IVM app, the IVM website, or wherever else you get your podcasts.